I stood alone in a silent room, holding a small cake that no one else bothered to carry. Grandpa lay on the bed, thinner than the blanket covering him, breathing like each breath had to be negotiated with fate. Today was his birthday, and somehow I was the only one who remembered what that used to mean. My phone buzzed once. A photo, my parents, my siblings, glasses raised, neon lights, a bar opening. Smiles wide, celebration loud, caption, big night. I didn't reply. I never reply when people show me who they are. Grandpa opened his eyes and smiled like he'd won something. You came, he whispered. Not they. Just you. I cut the cake into 2 pieces, one for him. One for the lie I'd been telling myself that blood means loyalty. As he struggled to lift the fork, I noticed the documents on the side table. Old files, old signatures, old power. The kind people forget an old man still holds. I listened, I observed. I remembered every laugh from that bar, every excuse they'd rehearsed for later. My mind wasn't angry, it was clear, calm, surgical. That night, while they toasted to new beginnings, I learned where every weakness lived, who needed money, who needed approval, who needed the inheritance they thought was guaranteed. I didn't need to confront anyone. I didn't need to raise my voice. All I needed was time in the silence they'd gifted me. My phone buzzed again, a message this time. Is Grandpa okay? I looked at him sleeping peacefully, then at the papers in my hand, and made a decision that would change every smile in that bar forever. I typed one word back, and that's when the real plan began. The word I sent was simple, harmless on the surface. No explanation. No emotion. Just enough truth to keep them comfortable, and comfort makes people careless. The next morning I arrived before the doctor did. Hospitals are honest places if you know how to listen. Machines don't lie, charts don't gossip. People do. I learned which nurse had worked here the longest, which administrator still respected Grandpa's name, which lawyer handled routine updates. For families who didn't visit often. Grandpa woke up later, confused but calm. He squeezed my hand like he was anchoring himself to the only solid thing in the room. They'll come later, he said, more hopeful than convinced. I nodded. Nods are useful. They don't promise anything. While he slept, I made calls I wasn't supposed to make and scheduled meetings no one would expect. I didn't change anything yet. I just positioned the chessboard. By afternoon, my family group chat came alive, loud, casual, performative concern. How's Grandpa? Crazy night yesterday. I read every message twice, not for meaning, for patterns. Who spoke first? Who followed? Who stayed silent? Silence tells you more than noise ever will. That evening, I found the old safe. It wasn't hidden, it never had been. People just stop looking once they assume someone is powerless. Grandpa had once shown it to me when I was a kid. Back when birthdays were crowded and laughter didn't feel rented. Inside were documents they thought no longer mattered: land shares, business stakes, handwritten amendments, and one envelope with my name on it, sealed, dated. Not yet. Power isn't in knowing everything. It's in choosing when to know. The next day they finally came, all of them too dressed, too loud, carrying gifts that still had price tags hidden inside. The room changed when they entered, oxygen replaced by performance. My mother kissed Grandpa's forehead like it was a checkbox. My father talked to the doctor without ever looking at the patient. My siblings hovered, calculating how sick really was. No one asked how he felt, they asked me instead. You've been here the most, my brother said. What's the situation? I gave them the same nod I'd given Grandpa. He's stable, I said. For now. For now is a dangerous phrase, it invites imagination. They relaxed. Slightly. Enough to reveal themselves. That's when I noticed it, how they looked around the room. At the furniture. At the files, at the safe. Like tourists revisiting property they already believed they owned. That night I finally opened the envelope. It wasn't a will, it was a contingency. Grandpa had known, maybe not about the bar opening, but about absence. About priorities, about the way people vanish when love stops being profitable. The letter was short. Precise, written by a man who'd already done the math. It didn't ask me to forgive anyone. It didn't ask me to protect anyone. It asked me to decide. Over the next few days I did nothing visible. I cooked for Grandpa. I read to him when his eyes got tired. I let my family believe things were unchanged. Behind the scenes, however, files moved. Appointments shifted. Signatures were requested, just in case. Nothing illegal, nothing loud, just doors opening quietly where walls used to be. One evening, my sister pulled me aside. You're being very involved, she said, smiling. Don't burn yourself out. Concern. Late, strategic. I don't mind, I replied. Someone has to be here. She studied me for a moment longer than necessary. People get nervous when they realize you're not playing the role they assigned you. A week passed. Grandpa got weaker, but his mind stayed sharp. Too sharp. One night, he asked me, are they behaving? I didn't answer immediately. They're being themselves, I said. He smiled. Not kindly, not sadly, knowingly. He whispered. Then you'll know what to do. The next morning, the lawyer arrived. Not the family lawyer, a different one. New face, new folder. My parents were surprised. My siblings were confused. I was expected. The lawyer explained there were updates to review, temporary measures, emergency structures. Words that sound boring until they rearrange lives. They looked at Grandpa. He was asleep. They looked at me. I nodded, not in agreement. In control. That's when the questions started, sharp ones, nervous ones. Why wasn't this discussed earlier? Who authorized this? What does this mean for us? I answered calmly, carefully, with the patience of someone who had already rehearsed this moment alone in the dark. It means? I said that things will be handled differently. My brother laughed, trying to break the tension. Come on, this is temporary, right? I looked at the lawyer. Then at the documents. Then back at my family, people who had chosen a bar over a man who taught them how to stand. Temporary, I repeated. Outside the room, machines beeped steadily. Grandpa's breathing slowed, then steadied again, like time itself was waiting to see what I'd do next. The lawyer closed the folder. Everyone went quiet, and in that silence, I realized something beautiful and terrifying. They still thought the story was about Grandpa's condition. They had no idea it had already become about them. And I hadn't even reached the point of no return yet. The silence after the lawyer closed the folder felt heavier than any argument. No one moved, no one spoke. When people realize control is slipping, they freeze, hoping stillness might stop momentum. It doesn't. My father cleared his throat first. He always did when authority was challenged. So, he said carefully, "We'll review this as a family." The word family sounded rehearsed, like a password he hoped would unlock something. The lawyer looked at me before answering. Not for permission, just confirmation of alignment. "These measures are already active," he said. "Review is optional." Another dangerous word. I watched their faces change in sequence: confusion, annoyance, concern, and finally fear, quiet, controlled, trying not to be seen. That afternoon I stepped out of the hospital for the first time in days. The air felt unfamiliar, like I'd crossed into a different version of the city while standing still. I didn't go far, just to a cafe across the street where people talked loudly about things that didn't matter yet. I sat by the window and made a list. Not of actions, of reactions. Who would panic first? Who would pretend to cooperate? Who would try to bargain? Revenge isn't about punishment, it's about predictability. By evening, the calls began. My mother rang first, soft voice. Concern wrapped in warmth. "You've been under so much stress," she said. "We're proud of you for stepping up. Pride offered late is rarely free." "I'm fine. A grandpa needs calm right now." She paused. People pause when they realize you didn't take the bait. My brother tried next. Straight to the point. "What exactly did you sign?" "Nothing you didn't have the chance to." I said. That ended the call. The next day, I noticed small shifts, subtle ones: a delayed payment, a postponed meeting, a name removed from an email thread. Things no one would connect yet, but they felt it, like a draft under a door you thought was sealed. Grandpa was awake that morning, more alert than he'd been in days. "I'm listening," I replied. He nodded slowly. "Good. Listening keeps you alive longer than talking." He asked for water. As I helped him drink, his hand tightened around mine, not weak, intentional. "Whatever happens," he said, "don't rush it." I didn't ask what he meant. I already knew. That afternoon the lawyer returned, this time with a sealed packet addressed to multiple parties. Notifications, formalities, the kind that don't explode immediately but tick louder each hour. My sister cornered me near the elevator. "You're enjoying this?" she accused, keeping met her eyes. Calm, neutral. "I'm handling it," I said. "There's a difference." She searched my face for anger, for resentment, for something she could label and dismiss. She found none. That unsettled her more than rage ever could. By the end of the week, everyone was visiting Grandpa more often, too often. Bringing flowers he couldn't smell, stories he couldn't follow, apologies that hovered just short of sincerity. They laughed louder, touched his hand more. Affection becomes theatrical when it's motivated by fear. Grandpa watched them with quiet amusement. One night, after they'd all left, he whispered, "Amazing what people remember when reminded of consequences." I smiled but said nothing. Behind the scenes, more pieces moved. Accounts audit, responsibilities reassigned. Temporary oversight committees formed. All justified. All legal. All clean. No one could accuse me of revenge. That's what made it work. One evening, my father asked to speak alone. We stood in the hallway outside Grandpa's room, the hum of machines filling the spaces between words. "You don't have to carry this burden alone," he said. "We're your parents." Parents, another key he hoped might still fit. "I know," I said. "That's why I'm being careful." He studied me, trying to find the child he remembered. The one who waited permission. "That lawyer," he said slowly, "works for you now." I met his gaze, held it. Long enough to make the answer irrelevant. He exhaled through his nose, not angry. "Be reasonable," he said. "Think long term." I almost laughed. "I am," I replied. That night Grandpa's condition dipped, not dramatically, just enough to remind everyone time was no longer theoretical. The hospital filled with urgency. Doctors spoke in quieter voices. Nurses checked vitals more often. My family hovered again, this time not pretending to be calm. I sat by Grandpa's bed, unreadable. At one point, my brother leaned in close and whispered, "If anything happens, we should talk." I didn't look at him. "We already are," I said near midnight. The lawyer sent me a message, one line, no punctuation. "It's done." I closed my phone and looked at Grandpa. His eyes were open, focused. "You moved something," he said. "Yes, good," he whispered. "They won't see it yet." "No," I agreed. "They're still watching the wrong door." The next morning, the notifications went out, quietly, to boards, To people who understood what silence meant. My family felt it before they understood it. Meetings canceled, calls unanswered, access delayed. My sister cried. My brother got angry. My parents went very, very polite. No one accused me directly. They were still hoping this was temporary. I stood in Grandpa's room as the sun came up, light spilling across the floor like a countdown. He squeezed my hand again, weaker this time. Promise me something, he said. Anything. Don't stop halfway. I leaned closer so only he could hear. I haven't even started, I said. Outside the room, I could hear voices arguing in hushed tones, panic trying to disguise itself as coordination. I straightened, took a breath, and walked toward the door. Because the next step wasn't about paperwork, it was about choice. And once I made it, there would be no pretending this story was still unfolding by accident. I walked out of Grandpa's room and down the hospital corridor. The fluorescent lights flickered once, barely noticeable. But it felt intentional, like the universe signaling that a shift was underway. Each step echoed, though the hallways were empty. A silence filled with expectation. Not mine, theirs. I paused at the nurse's station. A young nurse glanced up. She didn't know me, but I had learned enough to make her respect caution. Mr. Kine, she asked. Yes, I replied. Everything you told me yesterday, double check it. Her eyebrows rose. Do you mean? I mean exactly what I said. I cut her short. No room for misinterpretation. Silence is a tool. Fear is a teacher. As I left the hospital, I noticed the city had shifted. Traffic moved differently, or maybe I just saw it differently. Every corner, every passerby became a potential witness, a potential pawn, if only they knew the rules. But they didn't, and that made it beautiful. Back at Grandpa's house, I spread out the documents on the dining table. The envelope he had left me was still sealed, but I knew its contents by heart. Not the words, but the weight of it. This wasn't just inheritance or family secrets. This was leverage, control, proof that the world bends to those who plan instead of panic. My parents arrived later. They weren't angry anymore. Anger is useless against someone who refuses to react. They were calculated now, trying to smile. Everything is under control, my mother said. We just need to handle this carefully. I nodded. Careful, yes. But not careless, that's different. My father cleared his throat, stepping closer. We should meet with the lawyer again. Make sure all this unfolds properly. I allowed a small smile. Yes. But let's not pretend there's anything to unfold yet. Timing matters. They didn't like it. They couldn't see it. Timing had always been the edge that separated winners from survivors. That night I stayed awake planning, reviewing conversations, reviewing behavior, reconstructing every lie, every excuse, every slight they had shown over the years. People show you who they are not in grand gestures but in absence, in choice. And I had catalogued all of it. By dawn my sister called. Voice trembling, rehearsed concern. I am, I said calmly. Grandpa is stable, but you should know. I let the pause hang thick and uncomfortable. Some things are no longer yours to touch. Her breath caught. What do you mean? She hung up without another word. Fear is louder than anger, and I had learned to listen for it. The lawyer came again mid-morning. This time he wasn't alone. A junior associate accompanied him, a quiet presence with sharp eyes. They brought more documents. More temporary measures. Nothing illegal, nothing overt. Just subtle rearrangements that would ripple into chaos when the right moment came. Everyone noticed. Everyone panicked silently. My family tried to discuss, to negotiate, to charm. But charm has limits when the chessboard is invisible, and the opponent refuses to blink. I let them talk. I let them think their words mattered. And then, as they argued quietly in the corner, I pulled the envelope from the table. Grandpa's handwriting stared back at me, clear, deliberate, commanding. I didn't open it yet. The anticipation mattered more than the reveal. Control is stronger when the other side is uncertain. By evening, subtle shifts became visible. Small withdrawals delayed. Access permissions changed. Emails redirected. Meetings postponed without explanation. My family began noticing patterns, but not understanding them. Confusion is contagious. Fear is permanent. Grandpa's condition fluctuated. A doctor warned them family should prepare for decline. They nodded, feigning strength. They didn't understand that decline wasn't necessary for the plan. Presence and absence, attention and neglect, fear and hope, all were tools. I watched, I waited. One night, my brother approached me in the kitchen, whispering like we were conspiring of this. It's not normal, he said. No, I said. Normal is what keeps you from seeing the truth. He looked uneasy, as though trying to decide whether I was threatening or protecting. He couldn't tell. And that's exactly where I wanted him. Days passed, every action measured, every reaction noted. My parents began to whisper behind my back, unaware I could hear through subtle cues. They tried bribery, charm, apologies, and feigned concern. I listened, calculated, responded only when necessary. Grandpa's health stabilized further. He watched the drama unfolding like a seasoned general observing recruits, each move by my family reinforcing what he already knew. Then came the night when the first serious crack appeared. My sister left her phone unattended. I glanced at it briefly, reading messages she never meant for me. Discussions about influence, control, and who would benefit if certain powers shifted. I didn't react immediately. Subtlety is the essence of true strategy. I let her leave. I let her believe nothing had happened. But the seed was planted. Fear would grow. And when it did, no one could contain it. The next morning, my father tried to confront me in Grandpa's study. Enough games. This needs to end now. We can cooperate, work together. I interrupted him calmly. Cooperation is a choice. Timing is a privilege. You've given me neither. His face tightened. He wanted anger. He wanted guilt. He wanted the old me, the child who begged forgiveness. He wouldn't get it. Not anymore. I left him standing there, flustered, frustrated. Silent corridors are merciless judges. Later, I met the lawyer again. This time, the discussion turned practical. Transfers, permissions, powers of attorney, everything moving quietly, legally, and irrevocably. My family thought I was moving too slowly, that I was careful. But speed is reckless without knowledge. Strategy wins when patience is applied ruthlessly. Grandpa watched from his bed, a knowing smile hidden under tired eyes. You understand, he whispered. They won't even realize the game started until it's too late. Yes, I replied. And by then, it won't be about them. It'll be about what they made themselves. By the end of the week, the shifts became noticeable. Minor frustrations from my family, emails unanswered, approvals delayed, meetings cancelled without explanation. Each small inconvenience fed anxiety subtly, insidiously. My parents argued quietly in whispers I could hear without effort. My siblings fought over imagined slights. Their confusion became predictable. The anticipation of consequences amplified their mistakes. I had already predicted every conversation, every argument, every misstep, and I was ready. One night, Grandpa called me to his side. You've learned patience, he said. Good, that's half the battle. Now you must understand discretion. I nodded. I do. He smiled faintly, eyes twinkling with mischief only the wise possess. Then you're ready for what comes next. They will never see it coming. And when they do, it will be your choice whether to show mercy or teach them lessons they'll never forget. The following day, subtle changes became visible in the house. Small locks moved, files shifted, access restricted. Every minor inconvenience to my family was a calculated ripple. No one could yet connect the dots, but fear doesn't need understanding. It only needs perception. My sister cried one morning. My brother fumed. My parents whispered in corners. The chaos was subtle, elegant, effective. And all of it still only the preparation. I had not yet reached the point of no return. That day was coming. I stood by Grandpa's window. Bright lights, rushing cars, and people unaware that the quietest movements can be the most lethal. I breathed in deeply, calm, focused, in control. This story had no ending yet. Not for them, not for me. Not for the world watching quietly as pawns arranged themselves unknowingly. And when the time came when the plan was complete, the revelation would be absolute. But until then, patience is the deadliest weapon of all. The day finally came. Not with a bang, not with anger. Not with fireworks or yelling, it came quietly. I stood in the living room with the envelope from Grandpa still in my hand. The documents had already shifted power quietly over the past weeks, accounts frozen, permissions reassigned, boards informed. Every legal and financial step had been invisible to my family, yet unavoidable. They had no idea that what they assumed as routine now belonged entirely to me. My parents arrived first. Their expressions were practiced concern. They tried to smile, they tried to appear calm. They did not succeed. Everything is fine, right? My mother asked, her voice too high, almost cracking. Yes, I said, completely fine. For now. My father's eyes darted to the table where the lawyer had left folders. He noticed the papers weren't where he expected. A chill ran across his face. Subtle, brief, but unmistakable. You've moved things, he asked cautiously. I've arranged things, I replied, calm as a summer morning. Everything in order. Nothing permanent. Just aligned. Another dangerous word. By mid-afternoon, my siblings arrived. They entered carefully, observing, trying to gauge the room. My sister forced a smile. My brother tried to seem casual. Neither succeeded. The lawyer entered shortly after them, quietly placing the final folders on the table. I did not need to explain. The documents spoke for themselves. Contracts, amendments, permissions, everything that had been their assumed power, now required my approval. Everything is in order, the lawyer said, his voice neutral, almost indifferent. The final confirmations have been made. The house, the accounts, and all responsibilities are legally under temporary oversight until otherwise instructed. The words hung in the air. My family tried to process them. Eyes widened. Hands gripped the furniture. Breath caught. Fear had arrived, but subtly fear can never be faked. My mother's voice trembled. This isn't permanent, right? Temporary is subjective, I said. Everything depends on compliance. On behavior, on respect, on priorities. They looked at me, they looked at each other. They realized finally that I wasn't playing their game. I was rewriting it entirely. Grandpa watched from his chair, his eyes calm and knowing. He leaned slightly toward me. Good. Let them learn what absence teaches. I nodded. I didn't need to explain. Hours passed. They attempted discussions, negotiations, appeals. I listened quietly, recording every misstep mentally. Every argument revealed weakness, every demand revealed desperation. Every apology revealed the true measure of their character. By evening, I decided it was time. The envelope, Grandpa's words, the contingency, the final revelation. I called them together, my parents and siblings sitting stiffly in the living room, faces pale, voices hesitant. Even the lawyer waited silently. I opened the envelope. Inside were papers that were much more than legal documents. Amendments, clauses, instructions from Grandpa, one sheet handwritten addressed to them. Read, I said. Hands trembled as they unfolded the paper. The letter was simple, precise, cruelly fair. It outlined their absence, their priorities, their choices. It detailed how each decision, bars over birthdays, neglect over care, absence over love, had consequences. The assets they assumed were theirs were now under structured temporary control. Decisions they believed they could influence were now guided by the contingency plan Grandpa had set years ago. Each paragraph hit with clarity. You valued celebration over presence. Presence matters more than perception. You assumed loyalty is owed by birthright, it is earned by action. Everything you disregarded now requires your respect and your effort. Failure will result in permanent reassignment. My family read in stunned silence. Mouth slightly open, hands shaking, eyes avoiding mine. They finally understood this wasn't punishment born of anger. This was consequence born of clarity. I closed the envelope, letting the weight settle. You have been given time, I said softly. You have been given warning. Your next moves will determine whether this remains temporary or permanent. My brother spoke first, voice low, almost defeated. We didn't realize we. No, I interrupted. You did realize. You just assumed I wouldn't act. You assumed Grandpa's plans would protect you. You assumed my patience had limits. You assumed wrong. My sister cried silently. My parents sat frozen, finally realizing the game had changed entirely. Grandpa leaned back, watching quietly as if he'd rehearsed this moment for years. His eyes met mine. He whispered, barely audible. You've done well, calm, precise. Just as I taught you. I nodded. I learned from the best. The lawyer spoke again, finally. Everything is legally in place. Anything you choose to do next, your choice. I stood calm. In control. This, I said looking at them, is the result of choices. Choices you made. Consequences you ignored. Absence has a price. And it is not my anger paying it, it is your negligence. No one spoke. They didn't know where to start. And that precisely was the point. Later, as night fell, I sat alone with Grandpa. The house was silent. No whispers, no arguments. Just us. You've done it, he said, his voice soft. Not out of rage, out of wisdom. That is true power. It was never about rage, I reply. It was always about clarity. About teaching them that choices have meaning and absence has consequences. He nodded. Mercy, I said, as a choice. Not a right, and they have yet to earn it. Grandpa smiled faintly. Good, always remember the most dangerous people are those who wait calmly, knowing the next move is theirs to make. I looked out the window at the city below, lights flickering like distant stars. The night felt heavy but precise, as though time itself was holding its breath. The following days were quieter. My family moved cautiously, testing boundaries, hoping I would falter. They didn't understand that strategy is not about faltering. It is about predictability. Every attempt to regain control only revealed more weakness. Eventually, the truth sank in. They could no longer act without my observation, without my permission. Every word, every step, every choice, they were mine to guide. Not out of anger. Out of deliberate strategy. Out of the lessons Grandpa had instilled and the patience I had honed. And in that moment, I understood fully revenge is not in the act. Revenge is in the preparation. The timing, the control. Revenge is ensuring that when consequences arrive, they are inevitable, undeniable, and utterly deserved. I folded the envelope, placing it carefully back in its drawer. The documents remained in my possession. The house, the assets, the responsibilities, all were temporarily aligned under my direction. My family finally realized the extent of the shift. They were silent. Defeated not by violence. Not by anger, but by precision, by intellect, by calm control. Grandpa reached for my hand. You have finished what I started, he said. But remember, the best revenge is not to show them every card at once. Leave them in suspense. Let them understand eventually. I squeezed his hand, looking out at the city, at the world that continued unaware of the quiet upheaval that had occurred inside these walls. And I smiled, because for the first time, I knew true power. It was calm, calculated, and merciless, but invisible to those who had assumed they were untouchable. The end was not dramatic, it was silent, it was precise, it was complete. And in that silence, I realized something Grandpa had always known: the most dangerous people are not those who rage. They are those who wait calmly, understand every weakness, and strike, or choose not to strike, exactly when it matters. The house was quiet, the city outside oblivious. But inside, the lesson had been learned, and nothing would ever be the same again.